Okay, I think we're live. Hi everyone and welcome back to my channel. For those new here, my name's Nikki and we're here today for my end of the month wrap up of all the TV and film I've been watching. So let me just pop off that banner so it's not blocking me any further. Okay, so I've been watching a few things during December. So I'm going to share those with you. I'll group them depending on where I watched them. I've still not been to the cinema and I haven't watched any DVDs this month. I haven't been to the theatre, but I've been watching a fair bit on TV from streaming mainly. So first off, SBS On Demand, I watched a Japanese movie called Before We Vanish. This is a sci-fi film. The idea of aliens coming down and possessing human bodies as they prepare for an invasion. This was a really quiet but enjoyable drama. It's fairly slow paced in some ways, but I found it interesting as the aliens were trying to learn about humanity, and to do that they had to gather concepts of different things from people's minds, like what is work, what is a possession, and things like that. But whenever they took those from that person's mind, that person then lost their own conception of them. So the appearance of the aliens also coincided with this rise in mental health issues with the people in the community. It was a good piece. I don't want to spoil it too much, but I actually liked the way it ended. I think it was quite well done. It left one or two questions, but I didn't think that was necessarily a bad thing. So moving on to Viki. So I was really excited when I discovered that my right older brother, Watashi no Tadashi Onichan, was on Viki, because this is one of Furukawa Yuta's recent TV dramas. And because Japanese TV doesn't make it over here very much, I hadn't been able to see any of them. So when I discovered this one was on Viki, I went and rushed to watch it straight away. So this is based on a webtoon, and the basic premise is the main girl meets and falls in love with a guy, Furukawa Yuta, only to discover that he is potentially the person who killed her brother, from whom she's been separated for many years since their parents split. And over the course of the story, she has to assess her own feelings about that, and also come to terms with who her brother really was, because he's not the same as the young boy she remembered. I thought this was really good. Obviously, I was pleased just to be able to watch Furukawa Yuta, but his performance was strong. So was the girl who's the actress's name is gone from my mind at the moment, but I thought they had good chemistry together. I wasn't totally sold on the ending, and I don't know whether that's, I assume it is the same as it was in the webtoon, which is just an issue with the webtoon originally and not the adaptation. But it kind of left me with a few questions. But what about this and what about that? But other than that, I found it enjoyable. It's fairly short, just about 8 episodes, about half an hour each. So it's definitely worth checking out if you can get Viki. And then finally, moving on to Netflix for the rest of them. So I'm going to start with the films. So I watched 3 films, or 2 films and 1 filmed theatre piece on Netflix this month. The first of those was a Korean thriller called Forgotten. And the premise of this one was, there is a young man whose brother is kidnapped and he's missing for several days. And when he comes back, there's something different about him. And this actually is a film that went in a completely different direction than what I was anticipating from the way it started and from the blurb. I thought it was going to be very different than it was, and that's not necessarily a bad thing, because it did keep me guessing, and the twist when it happened wasn't one I'd anticipated or anything like that. So if you like thrillers that are a little bit different and that will keep you guessing, then it's worth having a look. The next one I watched was a German film called Freaks, and this is a kind of almost an anti-superhero story, I would say. The main woman discovers that she's been on medication since she was a child, which she's thought was just because of a sort of mental health issue, but it turns out it's to suppress these sort of superhuman powers that she has. And eventually she meets some other people with in a similar situation with similar powers. And at first they band together and everything's great, but then some of the group start kind of treading a thin line between being the good superhero and the bad supervillain, if you like. So then the group has to come to terms with how should they use their powers, should they use them at all. So it's a sort of fairly dark take on superheroes, but it's worth watching if you enjoy the genre. And next up is the theatre piece. So this is a piece of Japanese theatre from 2009 called Banyuki. And the best way to describe this, I guess, is a kind of Japanese take on the Count of Monte Cristo. It's that kind of revenge story. Someone who seems to have it all and has a perfect life ahead of him is wronged and is wrongfully imprisoned. And when he escapes, he's out to get revenge on those who destroyed his life, basically. So obviously there's a fair bit of samurai sword fighting going on. There's plenty of humour as well. But this was a really captivating piece. It goes for 3 hours, so it's a fair commitment, but it didn't feel like a long slog. It was enjoyable throughout. So if that sounds like your sort of thing, do check it out. And then moving on to the TV series. So I've watched 6 TV series during December. The first of these I actually started in November but finished in December, and that was Inheritors. So this is a very famous Korean one. Also, you might know it as Heirs. And it's reasonably old now, I think about 2013 or so. Compared to some of the Korean dramas I watched, this one is a little bit soapy, I'd call it, I guess. It is just relationships and slightly over-the-top relationships at times. But at the same time, it was strangely compelling in its way. And I did like the relationship between the two main characters. It also features a pretty stellar cast of Korean actors and actresses, and this was an early work for many of them, and they've now gone on to do a lot of other shows. So there's bound to be one of your favourites in there somewhere amongst the cast. So it's worth checking out if you're a big Korean drama fan, but it's not one of my absolute favourites. Going to Danish now, I watched The Chestnut Man, which was a sort of serial killer thriller. This was a reasonably good piece, I thought. Not too long. I think everything seems to talk to me now after watching like 16 to 20 episodes of each Korean drama. When it's only 6 to 8 episodes, it feels like it's over in a blink of an eye. But I thought it was nicely paced. I didn't guess who the killer was ahead of time, which was a bonus. And it was an interesting story. And I thought the storytelling and the way things were gradually revealed worked really well. Next up, I watched the 3rd and final season of Lost in Space. I really loved season 1 of this. Season 2 was okay, and I'd probably say I feel the same way about season 3. I think it was a good time to end it. I kind of feel that everything was beginning to feel a bit familiar, like we'd been there before. It's like Arthur Robinson's in trouble again. And this season in particular, there's always been the odd like heartfelt moment mixed in amongst the action. But in this season in particular, I felt that there was a definite lack of action in balance with how many heartfelt scenes we had to have between the characters, which became a bit sort of eye-rolling after a while. So if you've been watching it through season 1 and 2, you definitely want to watch this to finish it off and see how it's all going to end. But I definitely think, this is one of those shows where season 1 was the peak. Going back to Korean for a moment with My Name. So this is another revenge type drama. We have a young girl whose father was involved in the mob and he's killed, and she ends up going and joining the mob herself in order to get revenge, while at the same time she's leading a double life as a cop. And she believes that it was cops who were responsible for her father's death, so she's trying to sort of go undercover, if you like. However, it turns out things are a lot more complicated than she thought, and that perhaps she's been trusting the wrong people all along. So I won't say more than that. I thought it was a pretty good piece. Because this is a Netflix Korean one, it was shorter, only about 8 episodes. So I think that was about the right length as well for this story. I think it suited it well. The pacing was good, performances were good, and it was interesting. And although you could kind of guess where it was going before it got there, that didn't detract from it too much, in my opinion. So coming towards the end, we've got 2 more to go. So firstly, I watched an Icelandic murder mystery, serial killer kind of thing again, called the Valhalla Murders. And this was an okay piece. It's fairly short again. This one did feel a little bit slower paced than, say, the Chestnut Man. There were moments when there was a bit of a lull, and I kind of wanted them to get on with things a bit, but not too bad. And when it did pick up again, it did pick up well and kept me interested, even if I had the odd lull here and there during the episodes. So again, if Nordic noir murder mystery is your thing, or murder thriller, I guess is a better term for these style, then do check it out. Which brings us to the last one that I watched during December, and that was season 2 of The Witcher. Now, I'm one of the few people that was, I wouldn't say underwhelmed by season 1. I didn't hate it. There were things I liked, but I found the pacing a bit slow at times, and I thought that was even worse in this second season. Not a huge amount happens over the course of the 8 episodes. Really, they could have told the story they were telling within about 5 or 6, I think, because it just was strung out a little bit too much for my liking. I'm not a huge fan of Yennefer as a character. I don't like her very much. And I've never really kind of felt the chemistry between her and Geralt. So that whole part of the plot doesn't do a lot for me. So for me to appreciate this, I need some really good action fantasy scenes. And I felt that there were some, but there were not as many as I would have liked to have seen to keep me watching. So if you've watched season 1, you'll probably want to continue. And this is not to say I wouldn't watch season 3. I probably will, because my husband will want to watch it as well. But this is one I could take or leave. There's things I like about it, but there's things that just don't work as well for me. So a bit of a mixed bag to finish. I've got several seasons that I'm on the go with at the moment. I'm watching a couple of animes, We Can't Communicate and Blue Period. And I'm watching 2 Korean dramas, The Devil Judge and The King's Affection. So I will share my thoughts on those in January, but not in this format, because as I've mentioned in the last couple of videos, I'm bringing an end to these end of the month live streams because they don't get a huge amount of watches. I think I'm going to move my reviews more to Instagram, my blog, maybe Twitter as well, but probably concentrating mostly on Instagram and my blog. So if you want to continue seeing my reviews of things I've watched, check out my blog, www.nikkijmarcus.com, or find me on Instagram, NikkiJMarcus. So they're the best places to follow me if you want to keep up with all my news. In terms of my plans for YouTube and the like, I'm going to be talking about those as I wrap up my end of the month book reading vlog, which I'm going to be filming in about 5 minutes or so, as soon as it's set up. So do join me then if you want to find out more about my plans in general for 2022 in terms of my online presence. So I will end there for now, but I will be back, as I said, in about 5 minutes with my reading wrap up. So I hope to see you then. Bye for now, everyone.